Hello and welcome to episode number 21 of JRock's Pop Culture Revolution. Well, today is going to be a really fun, not really fun, but it's going to be a really special episode. Um, wasn't planning to do this, but something happened in the world of pop culture on January 30th. And of course, I'm talking about the passing of Demond Wilson. Now, of course, Demond Wilson was famously known for his roles Lamont Sandford in 1970s sitcom um, Sandford Son, one of my all-time favorite classic TV shows. So let's get into this. I wanted to kind of do a special episode and paying tribute to Mr. Demond Wilson. So let's get into it, folks. Okay, now, like I said, this is to pay tribute about Demond Wilson. So let's really get into it. Hello and welcome to episode number 21. And today we're going to be talking all about Sanford and Son star Demond Wilson, who died from prostate cancer on January 30th, 2026, at the age of 79. He died at home in Palm Springs. And so I thought it'd be fun to kind of look back on his life and his famous role as Lamont Sandford. Um, Here's a fun fact. Demond Wilson appeared in more episodes of Sanford and Son than the show's main star, Red Fox. Wilson appeared in 136 episodes, whereas Red Fox appeared in 133 episodes. Um, and this was because Red Fox, during season 3 in 1974, became involved in a contractual dispute with NBC. He wanted more money. It got to a point where he was demanding more money, and the executives at NBC kind of they weren't really having it. They wanted to show Red Fox that they could do the show without him. Of course, thank God that he wasn't out on strike for too terribly long. In fact, that's why Demond Wilson actually appears in more episodes of Sanford and Son than Red Fox. Although I remember when the show was on and watching it, it seemed almost like a season that Red Fox wasn't on the show. But funny thing is that he only really missed 3 episodes for the whole season. And they explained it away that Fred had a relative in St. Louis that had died, and he went to be with his family in St. Louis. And again, it was only 3 episodes, but it seemed like a whole season. And then they had Fred's good pal Grady move in the house and take care of his only son Lamont. Being Fred's best friend. And I don't know why. Lamont Sandford was a grown man. Why did he need somebody else to kind of babysit for him? But I guess it was to help him run the junkyard and help him around the house. So there's that. Now here's another fun fact. Demond Wilson's birth name was Grady Demond Wilson. Now, what's funny about that is I was just saying one of the characters in Sanford and Son, one of Fred's best friends, Grady Wilson. And it's kind of odd that Demond Wilson's birth name was Grady Demond Wilson. So that's a real fun fact there. Now, as I was saying, Demond Wilson was born October 13th, 1946, in Valdesote, Georgia. And it should be noted that Sanford and Son was one of the first TV sitcoms to feature an almost all-black cast. It became a touchstone of 1970s TV. It really was, folks. I gotta say, and in his role as Lamont Sandford, the long-suffering son of Jugman Fred G. Sandford, was often lovingly referred to as "you big dummy." And that became one of Red Fox's all-time famous catchphrases. And here's the thing, folks, with that. Um, like it or not, I mean, what's interesting thing too about Demond Wilson um, dying on January 30th, 2026, is he was the last surviving member of Sandford and Son. All the other cast members had passed away, so he was the final surviving cast member from that classic 1970s TV show. And it's funny, when we're watching these shows and we're growing up, you don't really stop and think and realize. But like I said, uh, Demond Wilson will always be Lamont Sandford to me. And anybody that ever watched Sandford and Son, he will always be our big dummy. And it's a funny catchphrase, and something Red Fox, like I said, lovingly referred to his dumb son. Hey, you big dummy. I mean, I put it right up there with some other classic Red Fox catchphrases, such as, how would you like one across the lip? Hey, Elizabeth, coming to join you, honey. This is a big one. Yeah, he was always faking those heart attacks. And even those heart attacks kind of, in a way, became a catchphrase. Again, it was a lot of, hey, this is a big one, honey. I'm coming to join you. And I'll be leaving our son here with a big mustache down here all on his own. But again, that's another thing with shows like this. Demond Wilson was very much Fred Sanford's straight man. And here's kind of some interesting facts, what I was able to learn. It says, after being born in Georgia, Wilson had spent many years in the Harlem section of Manhattan, New York. Wilson served in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War. So before he really did, got really into acting or anything, he was a soldier in the Vietnam War. Acting came later, I guess, after the service. It said the role of Lamont Sandford. Now, this is a fun fact that I kind of learned in doing the research for tonight's show. The role for Lamont Sandford before being offered to Demond Wilson was, of course, first offered to both Flip Wilson and Johnny Brown. Now, Flip Wilson, of course, he passed away a number of years ago, himself from cancer, and it's interesting that the reason that Flip Wilson turned the role down was because that was around the same time that he got his own Flip Wilson show, and he thought, I'm going to have my own show. I'm just going to be too busy to do both things. So he turned the role of Lamont Sandford down. And I wonder had Flip Wilson taken the role, if he would have played it any different than Demond Wilson. It's funny the way things work out. Again, I don't know how many people realize that Red Fox had a lot to do with Flip Wilson's, career kind of, going on the upward trajectory. I mean, I was reading or something on the internet, an article that said when Red Fox made an appearance on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, Johnny asked him, "Hey, Red, who's a comedian that you really like that that you think has a lot of talent?" He said, "I like this guy, Flip Wilson." And because of what Red Fox said, Johnny Carson found out who Flip Wilson was. He had him several times on the Tonight Show, and ultimately that had a lot to do with Flip Wilson eventually getting his own variety show. And so again, it's interesting that while the role of Lamont Sandford was originally offered to Flip Wilson, he turned it down and he got his own show. But again, I just stop and wonder if Flip Wilson had become Lamont Sandford, would Demond Wilson still gone into acting? Would his career been more successful, less successful? Just never know. But another interesting thing is, in regards to the role of Lamont Sandford, is once Wilson turned it down. It was also offered to Johnny Brown. Now, many of you know Johnny Brown, of course, from another classic 1970s TV sitcom, Good Times, which we talked about in past episodes of JRock's Pop Culture Revolution. And Johnny Brown played the lovable Buffalo Butt, Nathan Bookman, the nosy, troublemaking, um, super superintendent, the janitor who ran the projects. And so again, I'm interested if Johnny Brown would have played the role of Lamont. Um, what he would have played Lamont like? Would he done kind of what Demond Wilson did, or who knows? Lamont Wilson, Lamont Sandford might have been a very different character had Johnny Brown played the role. Just never know. And again, very much like I'm sitting here and going to tell you that, Demond Wilson to me will always be, of course, Lamont Sandford. And that has a lot to do with that he's ultimately the one that got the part. He's ultimately the one that we think of, again, when you think of Sandford and Son, you think of Red Fox and Demond Wilson. There were two main characters. And of course, Demond Wilson was, like I said, the sidekick of a straight man to Red Fox. And so that's kind of interesting, kind of thought to think, what if, Johnny Brown would have been Lamont Sandford? I mean, I can't really picture anybody else playing Bookman, but I suppose they could have got somebody else. But, it's interesting because, again, on Good Times, Johnny Brown became the butt of many fat jokes. And that's one thing I understand that he kind of got tired of, Johnny Brown, with the role of Nathan Bookman on Good Times. He's like, okay, enough with the fat jokes. But again, so I think Demond Wilson, there's no denying he very much, it will always be our lovable big dummy. When you hear big dummy, you know Fred's talking about his dumb son Lamont. And Lamont wasn't really dumb, but he was also, Lamont Sandford was kind of the voice of reason. When Fred would be scheming or he'd be doing something he really probably knew he shouldn't be doing, Lamont would come in and kind of save the day, and he'd talk his dad out of doing something stupid, or say, hey Pop, think twice about this. What you're doing, that's not too good of an idea. And so, of course, he was always looking out for his dad. And at the end of the day, as much as Fred and Lamont argued, at the end of the day, they were really there for one another. They really loved each other. And Lamont Sandford, okay, if you know anything about the background of the Sandford and Son story, Lamont Sandford, has lived all these years with his father because his mother died when he was very young, and he was raised by his father. And then, other characters that are in the show, we got Aunt Esther, who was Lamont's mother's older sister, and she was there to kind of be a surrogate mother to Lamont after his mother died. And Fred and Esther can't stand each other. They're always throwing insults at each other. But at the end of the day, the one thing they have in common is Lamont Sandford. And so they both love Lamont in their own ways. And they and it's kind of a dysfunctional family, if you will, but a family comes together like any dysfunctional family. At the end of the day, they're always there for each other. They're throwing insults at one another, but it's fun, hard to jab, and if you know what I mean. Nobody's out there really to really do hurt anybody or to screw anybody. It's and a lot of dysfunction makes for a lot of the laughs, that come within an episode of Sandford and Son. Okay, and it says now in the 1980s, Demond Wilson stepped back from acting, and he became an ordained minister. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I was reading. So what you may be interested to find out is that he said Demond Wilson, when asked about, how did he see his role as Lamont Sandford, he said, well, I seen the importance of it. People would come up and thank me for doing the character. He said, but also, he said, I felt like I was the second banana. In fact, he wrote a book about his experience on Sandford and Son. I think it's long been out of print. I would love to be able to get a copy of it. Maybe now that he's passed, somebody will put that back out. That would be a fun read, I think. But he was talking also about the reason he felt that he was a second banana. Of course, it was Red Fox's show. So Red Fox, of course, was in the leading role, but he knew his job was to be the straight man, to kind of be the butt of the jokes, if you will, and he was all right with that. Now, again, like I said, the role of Lamont Sandford, he was very much also the voice of reason. Now, don't get me wrong, Lamont Sandford was just as flawed as any other fictional character or real person. I mean, because there were, even though Lamont Reason and Lamont Sandford, in most episodes was a voice of reason. Every once in a while, he'd do something that was kind of where his jerky kind of side would come out. I mean, there was an episode where Fred Sandford becomes engaged to his girlfriend Donna Harris, who's a nurse. She's quite a bit younger than Fred, but when Lamont first finds out about the engagement, he's totally against it. He just doesn't want his pop to get married again. He doesn't want anybody coming in the house and coming between them. And so this is one of the episodes where Lamont, it kind of shows this kind of jerky or creepy side, whatever you want to call it, and he purposely goes out of his way to cause trouble between Fred and Donna, trying to break them up. Now, it's interesting because as the series goes on, evolves over the years, gets to a point where Lamont and Donna are able to be cordial to one another. But there's one episode where Lamont is just doing everything he can to come between Donna and Fred. But like I said, for the most part, Lamont Sandford is the one that's kind of always the voice of reason. Now, there's another episode I remember where Lamont Sandford he gets some of these expensive vases, like porcelain vases, and he tells his pop that I got a really great deal. He goes, I know these are worth more money, but the lady she didn't know what the stuff was worth, and so I got it for I got it's a real steal, pop. I really took her, and he's like, oh no, no, son, that's not right. You shouldn't do stuff like that. And this one episode too, of course, by the end of the episode, Lamont's being confronted, by the woman's husband that comes to the junkyard, says, you took advantage of my wife. You know those vases she sold were worth more money than what you paid for them. Like, hey, man, I just paid what she asked, And so again, even though Lamont Sandford is typically the voice of reason, the moral compass, not always. Lamont Sandford, I think, is just as flawed as Fred Sandford was of a character, but they like anybody, they got their good points and they got their bad points. But Demond Wilson also said that after Sandford and Son ended, he realized just how typecast he was because of that character. He said, I would go and audition for other roles and I would not get the parts because the director, a writer, a producer could only see me as Lamont Sandford. And so he's like, as much as I love that character, and people actually came up and thanked me for doing the role of Lamont, he says it did get in the way. And he says, I stopped getting as many auditions eventually. That had a lot to do with why he ultimately went into ministry. And once he went into ministry, he spent a lot of time where he formed a rehab house for former inmates that were trying to get over their drug addiction. So it's interesting that while this is what Demond Wilson is primarily known for, of course, Sandford and Son I'm talking about, um, Lamont Sandford, the big dummy. That is who he will always be remembered as. But you know what? That's all right. He found his place in pop culture. But when the acting roles, kind of dried up, and he made the decision, okay, it's time to move on. Again, like many people, Damon Wilson, there's many facets to his life. So when he decided to kind of get out of acting, like I said, he went into ministry, and his life took a whole new trajectory and new direction. And I guess no, even though many years have passed, since he played the role of Lamont Sandford, again, I remember waking up on January 30th and being like, oh my God, and of course I read, I came across something on the internet says Sandford Son star Damon Wilson dies at his home in Palm Springs, California, age 79. And then, of course, you read the stuff, and of course, if you're a Sandford Son fan, such as me, you're like, oh man, that's awful. That's sad. Another one of my heroes or somebody that I grew up watching on TV has passed away. It's part of life. But also the thing is, when you read something like this these days, you got to really make sure it's true. Used to be able you'd be able to kind of, oh, okay, somebody's reporting on Damon Wilson just died today. Wow, how sad. But I tell you, before I went and even reported it or told anybody, I immediately went to Damon Wilson's Wikipedia. I went to a couple other sites to see if the death was actually something that really happened. Because I tell you, folks, there's so much fake news out there these days. I mean, I cannot tell you. In one day this week, I was reading that supposedly three of the stars from another popular 1970s sitcom that I love, Three's Company. Three stars from that show apparently died also on the same day. I was reading that actress Joyce DeWitt, who played Janet Wood on Three's Company, the one that played Jack Tripper's best friend and neighbor, Larry Dallas, died. And also on the same day, Jenny Lee Harrison, who played Cindy on Three's Company. Amazingly, they all died on the same day, of course. And then you're reading different things about like Joyce DeWitt. She died. She's near death. And a lot of this is clickbait because some of these are, in fact, older stars. And they're not as in the news as much. And people are just looking for clickbait. And it's very sad because clickbait also, too. I learned my lesson because a couple of years ago, I got up one Saturday morning and I'm reading something similar on the internet. Game show TV personality Steve Harvey dies today. And of course, they give you these headlines that kind of to get your attention. Not only are you reading it, but then sometimes there's a link to click on. And I remember in the article I was reading on Steve Harvey died today. I clicked it on, and you know what happened? My computer got a virus. I had to then go take the computer, unhook it, take it to Best Buy, and get some virus software put on the computer so that would not happen again. So I learned my own lesson from clickbait, folks. It's very sad. I mean, even you read stuff like this, and then it'll see. First of all, I knew when I was reading about Damon Wilson, I knew his death was real because more than one site was reporting on it. You go to somebody's official Wikipedia, like I said. Now, if he died, it's going to be all over the internet, and then also it'll be all over the news. Even when Damon Wilson died, I think that was a Saturday morning too. Get up and it's on the morning news. Okay, so if they're reporting it, you know it's true. But now, if you read something like Steve Harvey died, again, that would be on the morning news when you get up. Depending on the time of death. But my point is, as soon as a celebrity dies, it would be reported on the radio, it'd be reported on the news, it'd be all over the internet. That's how you know some of this stuff is clickbait. And also, unless it's just kind of happening. If you read something like Joyce DeWitt dies in a fatal car accident. That's the headline. There's a link to click on, but it hasn't been reported on the news. Um, again, and it's not a lot of details. Um, it's kind of it's probably not true. So you have to look to see if it's reported on several sites. Um, it's just awful that you can't even trust. That you have to go to all that trouble of making sure, did this person really die? And again, like with Demond Wilson, I knew it was true because it was being reported on several sites. It was being reported on the radio. It was being reported on the morning news. So, okay, he really did die. And again, I was just watching an episode of Sandford and Son before doing tonight's episode, and I was watching this one episode, where Fred was in St. Louis, and his friend Grady's watching Lamont, and Fred goes away and tells Grady he's got all these little rules like no winos in my house, and no we don't want people staying over the house and all this. And so there's this one particular episode where Lamont and his friend Rollo are entertaining a couple of women, and Grady's telling him, no, you can't bring those girls in this house. Your father told me you're not to have any orgies in the house. And of course, Lamont's a grown man, and he's like, Grady Wilson. He goes, you're not going to tell me what to do in my house. They get Grady out of the house, so they lock him out, and then Grady's like not having it. He's like, okay, I'm gonna get back in that house because they changed the lock so the old man couldn't get in the house. And then Grady goes to get Aunt Esther, has her crawl through a window, catches the orgy going on, or as Grady likes to say, the orgy. And as you can imagine, all hell breaks loose. So again, this has been episode 21 of JRock's Pop Culture Revolution. I wanted to do this episode to pay tribute to Demond Wilson because, like he said, but he felt very much like Red Fox's second banana. He played second fiddle to Red Fox, but that was his job, and he did his job well. He didn't mind being the butt of a joke. He didn't mind being everybody's big dummy. You know what I mean? And so we wanted to spend tonight's episode making sure that we pay tribute and respect to Demond Wilson, our lovable Lamont Sandford, our lovable big dummy, who he will always be, but I think he'd be all right with that. In tonight's episode, Demond Wilson was very much the first banana. He was the star of the show, and I've had fun looking back on his life and remembering him. And so I don't know what else to say, but thanks for watching the latest episode of JRock's Pop Culture Revolution. And this is episode number 21. I can't believe we've already done 21 episodes of this show. It seems like they just keep getting better and better. And we got a few more surprises for you guys, but keep checking in because I do my best to do at least 1 to 2 episodes a week. So keep tuning in, and we'll keep rolling out the shows. Just have a lot of fun doing this stuff, and I'm and I'm sorry, but we had to do this episode tonight because, again, but it's to pay respect to one of my fallen heroes, Demond Wilson. I didn't realize until he died, as they say, you don't know what you got till it's gone. He hasn't played the role of Lamont Sandford in many, many years, since the 1970s. It's a role he made his mark in the world, not just as Lamont Sandford, but as an ordained minister. He helped, former prison inmates, get over their drug addictions. He was a man of many different facets, many different faces, and so let's do our best to honor the man, Demond Wilson. Man, I've had fun doing this. Good night, everybody. Take care. Bye for now.